Hello! Hello everybody, hello. I'm just going to wait till a few of you have joined. I am Tasha and just going to wait till we've got a few people. Hello, hello, lovely to see everyone. Thank you for joining. So I'm Natasha. But everyone calls me Tasha or Tash, and I'm just going to do a video today about Oxford, which is where I live. So hello, thank you everyone for joining. If you have any questions at all during this talk, then please just type it up and I will try and answer it to the best I can. Firstly, let me give you a little bit of background about myself. So I currently live in Abingdon, which is just about 20 minutes outside of Oxford, and I moved here at the end of August, so it's very new for me. And no, I'm English actually. I was born in a place called Crawley, which is just south of London, so about an hour south. So I grew up in a place called Crawley, so I've got a slightly, I mean you might not know it if you're not from England, but a slight accent. I'm sure, hello, thank you to everyone who's joining, hello. I'm sure anyone who's been, visited England or heard English people speak, our accents really vary depending on where you live. My favourite accent, and forgive me if there's any Liverpudlians listening, so people from Liverpool, but they have a Scouse accent, and I just love that accent. It's really raw and British and unique. But I'm from the south, so my voice is a bit different. So I've lived abroad in New Zealand, Australia and Canada. I was in Canada for about 3.5 years, and I can see that someone says their dream is to visit London, and I have to say I love England. I think when I was younger I couldn't wait to leave. England is a terrible place, and thank you, someone said they love my accent, thank you very much. And when I left, and experienced a few different cultures and did a little bit of travelling, not much, but a little bit, I realised that England is brilliant. There's so much going for it, especially the history. And I think that's a really beautiful thing, that we have all these old buildings, all this culture. So I moved back from Canada about 2.5 years ago. So when I moved back from Canada, I lived in a place called Crawley, which is my hometown down south, and it's a nice town, but it's not where I wanted to live. So my boyfriend and I, we've managed to rent a place in Abingdon, which is right by Oxford, and that's what I'm going to be talking about today. So Oxford, world famous. I'm sure many of you listening have heard of Oxford. Hopefully a few of you have visited, or maybe you will visit. So I'm going to do a bit of a talk about Oxford today, and please, if you have any questions, just ask away. Anything, if you want to talk about language or any questions about English, please go ahead. So I've got a little PowerPoint presentation, and I think if I can do this, I'm going to just swap the camera around and I'm going to show you and talk a little bit about Oxford. So Oxford is known as the City of Spires. So all of these images here, spires. which is Spires. And a good question, someone's just asked, is Oxford far from London? And it's fairly close. It's probably about an hour by car, or maybe 45 minutes on the train. So it's pretty close to London, and but also separate. I like living in Oxford because it's like as beautiful as London and as many things to do as London, but not quite as busy. So there's a great question there. It is a university, and that's what I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to talk about the University of Oxford and how it works. So let's just begin, just quickly, with how England is divided. Just to go back, spires, S-P-I-R-E-S, so like the point, the towers of a building, the spires. It's a great word. So England is divided up into all sorts of different counties, and this was in the Middle Ages, really, between the 5th and 15th century. England was divided up into counties, and that meant that local governments, or local county leaders, could look after their area for the benefit of the country. And hello everyone who's joining, thank you for listening. Now I am going to read off this list because I think it's quite interesting to listen to the pronunciation. So I'm going to flip the camera around again. It's going to be a bit back and forth. And there are 48 counties in England. So England is divided up into lots of counties. And I am going to read this list because it's interesting to note some of the pronunciation. So for example, Bedfordshire. We don't say Shire, even though that's how you would pronounce it phonetically, Bedfordshire. We just say Bedfordshire, Berkshire, Bristol, Buckinghamshire, Cambridgeshire, Cheshire. Might have heard of the Cheshire Cat in Alice in Wonderland. City of London, Cornwall, Cumbria. This is an interesting one. Looks like it should be Derbyshire, but it's actually Derbyshire. Devon, which is a beautiful, beautiful place on the coast of England that I'd really recommend everyone visits. Dorset, County Durham, East Riding of Yorkshire, East Sussex, Essex, Gloucestershire, Greater London, Greater Manchester, Hampshire, Herefordshire, and this is an interesting one, Hertfordshire. So not Hertfordshire, but Hertfordshire. The Isle of Wight, which is a little island. Kent, Lancashire, Leicestershire, Lincolnshire, Merseyside, Norfolk, North Yorkshire, Northamptonshire, Northumberland, Nottinghamshire, Oxfordshire, which is where I live, in Oxford, Rutland, Shropshire, Somerset, South Yorkshire, Staffordshire, Suffolk, Surrey, Tyne and Wear, Warwickshire, West Midlands, West Sussex, West Yorkshire, Wiltshire and Worcestershire. This word kind of looks like it's Worcester, but it's Worcestershire. So apologies for those who found that quite boring, but I think it's interesting to look at the pronunciation and note that we have a lot of shears or shires. Maybe think of Lord of the Rings, Shire Baggins and all that. So Oxfordshire, I'm just going to show you on my map, is this red here, so it's south. And the thing about Oxford that really struck me is you really feel you're still in the countryside even though you're in a city. So there's lots of walks, lots of countries and lots of pubs, which I'm going to talk about. So it's a really, really great part of England. I'd only visited Oxford for the first time about 2 years ago, and I think anyone who visits, you'll fall in love. It is fantastic. So, Oxford. I think many of you would think maybe Oxford University, because obviously it is one of the best universities in the world. I didn't go to Oxford University, alas, but I have some friends who did, and needless to say, they had an amazing experience. So, and hello, thank you for joining us, everyone. Really great to have so many people. This is lovely. It's a bit weird talking, you know, so please ask questions. So if anyone has any questions, just go ahead. A very famous person that you may or may not have heard of is John Radcliffe. I'm going to start with John Radcliffe because he was a physician, so a doctor, an academic, and also a politician. And I'm going to show you some images because if you come to Oxford, John Radcliffe's name is kind of everywhere. So I'm just going to flip the screen round here for you. This is the John Radcliffe camera, and it's absolutely stunning. There's this square that the camera is located in, and it used to be used, it's not used anymore, but it used to be used as an observatory, so for looking at the planets and the stars. And it is just gorgeous, and it's named after John Radcliffe. You can see even just this square, which anyone can visit, is absolutely stunning. To go inside the building, I believe you have to be a university student, but you can absolutely walk around here. This is the Radcliffe Infirmary. So this, or infirmary, is just another word for hospital. We don't call them infirmaries anymore, but back in the day it would have been known as an infirmary. And this is just a quite a good classic example of the buildings that you might see in Oxford. Really beautiful, large, you know, obviously this was a hospital, kind of classic buildings. Here's another one. This was the science library, and a lot of these buildings are still around. They've been around for hundreds and hundreds of years. And this is obviously a more modern, the JR Hospital or the John Radcliffe Hospital. So when you come to England, or I'm sure many of you have been, and I've just got a quick question here. I'm from Crawley, West Sussex, but I live in Oxford now. So I live in, well, Abingdon, which is just outside of Oxford. And the thing that I would say everyone must do is visit the museums. We have the most amazing museums, which I'm going to talk about a little bit as well, because they are phenomenal. I mean, I will continue to be continued. For the moment, I just wanted to talk about some famous people from Oxford. So I'm doing some research for this. Oh, and just a quick question. Yes, I am a teacher. I teach English online, and I also work in a school. And feel free to keep asking me questions. Love it. Okay, so doing some research for this talk, there were so many, obviously, thousands of people have studied at Oxford University, and among them are 28 British Prime Ministers who went to Oxford University. I want to say that again, 28 Prime Ministers went to Oxford, and at least 30 international leaders So for example, Australia's Prime Minister, well, former Prime Minister, Tony Abbott, he went to Oxford and studied there. There's also 55 Nobel Prize winners and 120 Olympic medal winners. So obviously Oxford is known for teaching the brightest and the most, passionate and the smartest, I guess, or people who want to learn. You may have also heard of Cambridge University. So Oxford and Cambridge, they're known together as Oxbridge. And Cambridge is another fantastic university. So Oxford and Cambridge are the best in the country. And a good question here, how long do students usually study at Oxford? Generally speaking, in England, if you do a degree, it's 3 years to do a degree. However, if you want to become a doctor or a psychologist or specialise in a particular field, you would then go to do your master's or a PhD and study for a few more years. And someone has also just asked, what is the weather like in England now? Which is a great question because I'm English and I love talking about the weather. So thank you for these questions. It's really beautiful actually today because it has been raining for weeks and grey and miserable, and today it was really cold, like freezing cold, but gorgeous, bright and sunny, and I much prefer that. I prefer it when it's really cold but sunny, other than classic English grey weather. And no, I didn't study at Oxford University. No, I just live here. I wish. Although, again, another benefit of living so close to Oxford is you can attend free lectures or free talks. So tonight at 8 p.m. I'm going to a free talk, a free astronomy talk. So a free talk about the stars, and it's brilliant. I can just go, learn something cool, come back home. It's fantastic in that sense. So there is a lot of free education that you can still get. To just quickly talk a little bit more about a few more people you may have heard who studied at Oxford. One of the most famous people will be C.S. Lewis, who wrote Alice in Wonderland. Alice in Wonderland, so C.S. Lewis, his real name is Charles Dodgson, and C.S. Lewis is known as his pseudonym, so his writing name, which is a great word, pseudonym. And there was a real Alice Liddell who lived in Oxford, and C.S. Lewis was friends with her and her family, and a lot of the inspiration for the Alice in Wonderland books, which I may have a copy of, a lot of the inspiration was around Oxford, and you can actually do some really fantastic tours, Alice in Wonderland tours. So if you ever come to Oxford, I would recommend one of those tours. In fact, I've got an image that I can show you later. So let me just show you a classic. I actually have the Alice in Wonderland book, and for those of you who might not have read it, there's an image of Alice and the Cheshire Cat, and it was all nonsense was the idea, but there's a lot in these books. Great for children, great for adults. If you go into Oxford, into the city, It's fantastic because there's an Alice in Wonderland shop and you can buy all sorts of cute little Alice in Wonderland things. So C.S. Lewis, very famous. Also J.R. Tolkien, who wrote Lord of the Rings. He studied and wrote here as well. And in fact, C.S. Lewis and J.R. Tolkien were used to write together in a pub called the Eagle and Child, which I'll talk more about in a little bit. So lots of writers, lots of scholars. You may, just to list a few more, you may have heard of Percy Shelley, who was a poet, Aldous Huxley, who wrote Brave New World, Nigella Lawson, the chef, she studied at Oxford, Mansoor Ali Khan Patoudi, who was the captain of an Indian cricket team, and probably my favourite author, Philip Pullman, who still lives in Oxford, and sometimes you see him riding his bicycle and you can give him a wave. And he wrote the Northern Lights series, which fantastic set of books. And someone has asked, have I ever been to Russia? No, but I would love to go to Russia. I would absolutely love to visit Russia. It's on my list of many places to visit. So, and I don't work, someone has asked if I work at a university. I don't work at a university, but I work at a secondary school. So secondary school is children aged 11 to 16. Thank you for the questions. Please keep them coming. Okay, so I'm just going to flip the camera around again and I'm just going to show you a few more pictures. So, famous places. Okay, sorry about that. Oxford Museum of Natural History. I went here for the first time last week actually, and it is absolutely gorgeous. It's in this beautiful building and it's not as big as the Natural History Museum in London, but it's so fantastic that Oxford has its own Natural History Museum. And at the back of this museum is Pitt Rivers Museum, and Pitt Rivers is full of anthropological things, and I mean it's gorgeous. There's so much to see. You could spend a week in Pitt Rivers and never see everything. So that's a really great thing. I just need to express how great the museums are, and they're free. So you can come to Oxford for a day out and you could go to a museum for free, not spend any money, learn some amazing things. There's always a gift shop, get some, get a fake dinosaur bone to come home with. So I really, you would absolutely love the museums. And another good question here, how much is the education at Oxford per year? So, to do a degree, so you finish school in England aged 18, and you can either, you finish school at 16, and then you can go to college or sixth form, study your A-levels, and then when you're 18 you go to university. Now unfortunately it is very expensive to study in England. However, whether you study at Oxford University or Durham University or Brighton University, the price is the same, and it's £9,000 a year. And I think it's actually gone up. I think it's £9,250, which in my opinion is way too much money. However, you can get a student loan. So people who want to study, they can get a loan, a student loan we call it, from the government, and that means that you don't pay back the loan until you're earning a certain amount of money. So if I went to university for 3 years and then I came out and I had probably, the average would be £40,000 to £50,000 of debt, then you would only pay it back when you were earning, say, a minimum, I think it's around £24,000 a year. So you only start to pay back your tuition fee when you can afford it, and it's a very small payment each month. So yeah, great question. Please feel free to ask anything else. Something that I know most of you will love is, I mean, in England we love a good castle, don't we? We absolutely love a castle. Now this castle, Oxford Castle and Prison, it's slap bang in the middle of Oxford, so it really is, you know, it's right in the city centre. I've not actually been inside, I've seen the outside, but again, another fantastic place to visit. Although I would say, come to England, there are so many castles. Castles are amazing, they're everywhere. You can visit castles all over the country and they're always brilliant, so definitely recommend that. So just before I talk about Christ Church College, the University of Oxford is split into colleges. So if you're studying medicine, for example, you might go to Christ Church College. If you were studying mathematics, it might be a different college. So depending on what you're studying depends on the college that you go to. Now all the colleges, you know, there's generally speaking, there's a hall where people can have food. There's you know, places like common rooms, common areas to relax, study areas, and you get something called an alumni card, which means you can study at the libraries. And I'm just going to flick the screen back because, in my opinion, Christ Church College is the most beautiful. I mean, it's absolutely stunning. I did have a friend who is a paediatrician, so she is a doctor who specialises in children, and she lived at Christ Church College. She lived in I think it's somewhere over here. She lived, I mean, what an amazing place to live. I feel like you're living in history. It's so cool. And this, now, I'm hoping that you guys have read Harry Potter, or at least seen the movies. Give me a thumbs up or a wave if you've watched or love Harry Potter, because I love Harry Potter, especially living in Oxford. In fact, right here I've got a Gryffindor cushion, and because who knows, I've got a Slytherin cushion as well. Lots of thumbs up here, and yeah, we love it. We love Harry Potter here. Now this picture I'm going to show you, so this is Christ Church College, and this is a dining hall where the students would have dinner and breakfast and lunch. And this kind of room, this idea, inspired J.K. Rowling when she was writing the Harry Potter books. And I mean, you can see why. It's absolutely stunning. These long tables, the portraits on the walls. I mean, who's this guy? I don't know, but probably a monarch or something. Oh, look, that could be Queen Elizabeth over there, or, you know, I mean, it's amazing. In these beautiful buildings, stained glass windows like in churches. So a lot of the colleges have rooms like this, some more grand than others. So this really inspired the Harry Potter films, and in fact I believe they did film in Oxford. So if you come to Oxford, you can do a Harry Potter tour. Talking of tours, there's so many. If you come to Oxford, you can do a free tour, you can pay for a tour, and you can do bicycle tours, and it's a great way to learn the history of Oxford, to see the sights, just tip your guide, and it's brilliant. So there's lots of tours you can do in Oxford. Also, I just very quickly, I've got to talk about Bodleian Library. Now, this picture does not do it justice, but this is where the students can study. You can only go in here, Bodleian Library, if you have a library card or an alumni card, if you attend one of the colleges. And it, again, just stunning, just beautiful, beautiful architecture. Oh, this is what I was going to talk about earlier. So, these boats, the Salters Streamers, they've been around for, I think, 150 years. And this is the River Thames. This is just where you get the boat from. And you can do an Alice in Wonderland boat tour down the River Thames. Again, a great way to see the city, a great way to see Oxford and learn some history. Really recommend that. Just going to flip this camera around again. Excellent. I hope this is interesting to you guys. I found this fascinating when I was doing some research. There was so much I didn't know. And please keep the questions coming, anything you want to ask. So a typical college, going back just briefly to the colleges of Oxford, a typical college consists of a hall for dining, so that picture that I just showed you, so a dining hall, a chapel, so like a church hall, a chapel, a library, a college bar for drinking, very important part of university life, common rooms, and about 200 to 400 undergraduates, so people studying for their degrees, as well as lodgings. Yeah, so that's quite interesting. Now, the next thing I've got to talk about, if you come to Oxford, the pubs. An English pub. Forgive me, but you cannot beat an English pub. Fish and chips, pint of beer, sorted. It's the best. So Oxford is, you know, these pubs have been around, some of them for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. Especially in Oxford. Oxford was the first university, or the first English-speaking university. So, you know, there's obviously a lot of history here. And there's this great pub, I'm going to sort of flick my camera around, called the Turf Tavern. Now this pub, I've got some information which I'll find after, is really small. You have to really go down some alleys, really find yourself here. This guy, look, he's having a great time. And it used to, I can't remember what it used to be called. I'll try and find out before the end of this talk. But this pub used to be, people used to gamble, used to be a bit of a crazy pub. Oh, here we go. It used to be called the Spotted Cow, but the name was changed in 1842, likely as part of an effort to extinguish or end its poor reputation for illegal gambling. So this pub, it was actually used as a drinking tavern in 1381. So 1381, people used to go to this pub and have a beer, and it's sort of tucked away. So It's a fantastic place to visit. They also have quite a nice rule: no laptops in the day or up until a certain time at night. So you're not allowed to study there. You have to have a drink, which I think is important. This is the pub. It's not a great picture, but this is the pub I was talking about earlier, the Eagle and Child. So this is where C.S. Lewis and J.R.R. Tolkien would write their books. So think Alice in Wonderland, Lord of the Rings, big chunk of it was written in this pub. It's a fantastic pub. It is tiny. You will be crammed in like a tin of sardines. It is very small, but it's gorgeous. Great pub. And the locals call it the Bird and the Baby. So the Eagle and Child, or the Bird and the Baby. Yeah, so that's another good pub. And there's lots of pubs by the river, because the River Thames flows through the city. The Trout Inn, you can sit, especially obviously summertime, you can sit outside, have a drink and some lunch, overlook the water. Does anyone have any questions about English pubs? Maybe I could tell you some traditional pub food would be fish and chips, pie and mash, like a steak and kidney pie. Oh, you can tell it's nearly dinner time here. Don't know about you guys, but I'm getting hungry. So it's yeah, a classic pub food. You can't beat it. So yeah, I mean, there are just so many great things about Oxford. I did also want to share with you another place just outside Oxford, and I've actually just got Google open, so feel free to look yourselves. But this place, Blenheim Palace, just a short bus ride outside of Oxford. Actually, my boyfriend, I don't know if you can see my ring, proposed to me there just before Christmas. So I'm engaged, which is very exciting. So he proposed to me outside this palace. We went for a walk, and I mean, goodness me, what a place to be proposed to. It's stunning. It's absolutely, it's amazing. It's worth visiting, and you feel like you're really out in the countryside. It's such a short bus ride. I think it's about 30 minutes on the bus, and it's a real historical site as well. It's a World Heritage Site. And thank you guys, thank you for the congratulations. Thank you. Yeah, it's very exciting, getting engaged, about time. Yeah, so I mean, come to Oxford and just, there's so much to explore, there's so much to do. I was actually gonna, I mean, thank you everyone saying congratulations, that's really nice, thank you very much. So of all the things to do, I mean, you've got to visit the universities, you've got to go to the museums, you've got to go to the pubs. I mean, there's just so much. There is so much you can do. I found out, I was going to read this to you because I thought this was really interesting. Obviously, Oxford University is like up there, isn't it? One of the best universities. And it says, I found out that more than 21,500 people applied for around 3,300 undergraduate places. So that means that on average, it receives more than 6 applications per place available, basically. So it is really competitive. It's really hard to get into, but I guess that's why people who study there often become our Prime Minister, because it's such an amazing place to study. So I thought that was interesting. Oh, someone's typed something in Russian. I think that means congratulations. I'm assuming so. So thank you very much. And what else was I going to tell you? Oh yes, just going to flick the screen round because earlier I was talking about the spires. People who joined in right at the beginning, just so you can see that written down. The City of Dream Spires, because of the architecture, because of these tall. You can go. There's a place called the Covered Market, which has been around again hundreds and hundreds of years. It's a market. It's a bit old school, so it's a market. You know, where you can buy fresh fruit and vegetables. You know what? It kind of reminded me of, if anyone's been to Italy and going to the markets in Italy to buy your fruit and your veg and your cheese fresh from the market. The Covered Market is a bit like that. And there's this fantastic bar, rooftop bar, and you can sit on the roof. There's heated seats, which is perfect because England is bloody freezing, although not compared to Russia. I'm sure a lot of you are Russians and you must think, I don't even know what cold is. I think it's cold, and it was only -2 today. I was frozen. Anyway, I digress. There's a great rooftop bar, and there's spires that you can see, and you can see the city skyline, and it's just gorgeous. So there's lots of places like that. Hello, thank you, all these people who are joining. Another cool bit of history I found is that the first colleges of Oxford were built in the 13th century, but women weren't admitted to the university until 1878, and that in fact it wasn't until, I couldn't believe this, 1974 was when all the colleges had to open up to women. So 1974, what's that, 50 years ago, not even. So that was really interesting, and obviously now it's very inclusive. People from all sorts of backgrounds can study at Oxford. And also, this was really interesting. During the Second World War, Oxford didn't actually get bombed. So in London, there was something called the Blitz, which you may or may not have heard of. And a lot of buildings in London were completely destroyed. You know, it was you know, terrible. A lot of people died, and we lost a lot of historical buildings. But Hitler didn't bomb Oxford because he wanted that as his capital if he conquered England. So they didn't bomb Oxford, which is, you know, lucky for us because, you know, it would have destroyed a lot of history. So I thought that was really, really interesting. And also, again, one of the first museums in the whole world was open to the public in 1683. 1683. And again, the museums are free. You can go to the museums for free. You can go to London museums for free, Oxford museums for free. Ah, so good. I know I've spoken a lot about the museums, but I'm sure you can tell I just love a museum. Love them. So I guess, you know, Oxford really was a city of many firsts. You know, the first English-speaking university, the first museum for the public, the first place that women could study. I mean, there's so many firsts here. So it really did lead a lot for the country. And oh, a good question, by the way. I found this out. People who live in Oxford are known as Oxonians. So I'm an Oxonian because I now live in Oxford. I thought that was quite cool, Oxonian. Did anyone have any questions? We've got just about 15 minutes left. So please, hello, thank you to everyone who's joining. Really great to have so many people. So please, if you have any questions, doesn't necessarily have to be about Oxford, but maybe an English question that's been bugging you, please just go ahead and ask me anything. That's what I'm here for. If not, I'm just going to keep talking about Oxford. Oh, and you're welcome. Someone has said thank you for a lot of for such fascinating facts. My pleasure. Thank you. It was amazing to find out so much. Actually, something else I discovered. The first person to run a mile, so in under 4 minutes, that happened. That was an Oxford student. Previously they said it's impossible, no one can run a whole mile in under 4 minutes, this guy, Roger Bannister was his name, he did it, and obviously now that record has been beaten and beaten and beaten. I don't know what the quickest time is, but yeah, that's really interesting. And another good question, what age students do I teach? So I teach any age online. I've taught as young as sort of 11 online, to up to adults. So I like teaching all different ages. I've worked in England. I've worked in secondary schools and at colleges, and in Canada I used to work in primary schools with really little kids. So I've got quite a range. My favourite is probably, I do love teaching adults. I enjoy the conversations, and I love learning about other cultures. I have a Russian student at the moment, and she is fascinating, and she's taught me so much about Russian culture and Russian history. So I really do enjoy that a lot. Thank you for these questions, guys. These are great, so please keep them coming. Anything you want to know. What else was I going to tell you about? Let me see. Oh yeah, this is what I was going to show you. So there's a time of year where obviously you get all the students graduate, and I just thought this was such a cute picture. So this, for those who've been listening, you might remember, this is the John Radcliffe camera, and it's gorgeous. I've got about 500 pictures of myself outside here because I just love it so much. In fact, I'll post one after so you can see. And everyone who graduates, they wear these, we call them gowns, and they all throw their hats up in the air, and especially in summer and going into autumn, you see students everywhere graduating and celebrating, and it's so lovely. It's just such a great atmosphere. The only downside is you can't get into the pubs because they're so busy with people celebrating. I'm afraid I don't speak Russian, so if anyone has any, if you can translate that, sorry Eleanor, I can't answer because I don't speak Russian. And good question here, gowns. Yes, even though we can use the word gown for, a lady's dress, a nice gown, we can also use the word gown for these like robes, and also we wear dressing gowns. I don't know if you've heard of that. A dressing gown is something you wear when it's cold in your house in the morning, and you tie it around your waist and you wear it. Good question, very good. These are great. This is what I'm here for. So anything that pops into your head, please just ask. Another thing I was going to show you is this again. Gorgeous. Look at this bit of architecture. This is called the Bridge of Sighs, and it's just a walkway between two colleges. And again, a real historical site. You will see people standing underneath taking pictures all year round. Bridge of Sighs, absolutely gorgeous. So yeah, it's brilliant. It's a great place to live. There's lots going on, all sorts of bus tours. It's sort of different areas. It's very different to my hometown. So I grew up in Crawley, for those of you who weren't here at the beginning. And Crawley is very working class town, meaning there's not a lot of money, there's no museums. It's beautiful in some respects, and it's my hometown, so you know I have a lot of pride for my hometown. However, it's nothing like living here, where you really can do all sorts of things. There's always events, there's always talks. Philip Pullman, the author I was talking about earlier, some of you, maybe if I show you the cover of his latest book, might recognise this, The Book of Dust. So he's an author that you'll see riding his bike, because Oxford is a very bike friendly city. Lots of people ride their bikes, which is really fantastic. So this Book of Dust, you could get tickets to go see Philip Pullman talk about it live. So again, that is just another great thing to do, to go listen to an author do a talk, so that even if you're not a student here, you can really see a lot. And what else was I going to show you? Oh yes, shopping in Oxford. Give me a wave if you like shopping, because I do, even though I've never got any money. I love shopping. Who doesn't? For shopping, Oxford has a huge, very modern Westgate, so a big mall, or mall, really. Mall is Americanised. A mall is how we'd say it in England. But for shopping, there is something called Blackwell's Bookshop, and it is huge. I'm just going to find a picture to show you, because if you love reading as much as I do, you will just fall in love with this place. It's absolutely massive. So obviously Oxford is great like that. There's loads of things, loads of bookshops. Here we go. This is quite a good image. If I can, don't know if you can see that, how well you can see that. So this is Blackwell's. It's a bit of a famous bookshop in Oxford, Blackwell's University Bookshop, mainly just because it's so huge. You could spend weeks in Blackwell's and never get bored. Almost as big as some of the museums. Yeah, so I think that's everything I wanted to tell you. Just any more questions anyone has about Oxford, or anything they're curious about, please go ahead and ask. For those of you who missed my last Instagram talk, thank you. Someone said it's been a lovely excursion around Oxford today. Thank you, that's really nice to hear. Yes, for those of you who missed my previous talk, I did a talk about education all around the country, and you know, people go to university generally age 18 for 3 years, and people who come to Oxford, obviously there's really high expectations because it's such an amazing opportunity. But I feel it's a lot of pressure, isn't it, for someone who might only be 18 years old to come to Oxford to study. But then they might go on to do some great things. You never know. And let's just end the talk today. you may have heard, has anyone heard of punting? Or so basically, because Oxford is on the River Thames, there's the Oxford Rowing Club, and rowing and punting, so like being on a boat. Let me just find a picture for you because I'm not explaining that very well. It's a huge part of Oxford. Oxford, they compete against Cambridge, so it's a very big thing in the spring and summer. Even in winter, you look out to the Oxfordshire, to the River Thames, and you will see people on the boats working hard to try and be the best they can. And a bit like in Italy, is what I kind of picture. You can have someone, you can go punting. You can either do it yourself or have someone do it for you. And again, it's a gorgeous way to see Oxford. Just one person standing with a paddle, and just going along the river. I tell you, looking at these pictures, it's definitely making me ready for spring. Who else can't wait for spring? I can't wait. Oh my goodness. I hope the weather's okay where you guys are, because I'm ready for it. I'm sick of the cold and the dark. Yeah, so I think just have a couple of minutes. You know, please ask me anything that you've got. Any questions, any English related questions, doesn't have to be about Oxford. And just again, really thank you all for joining, and for letting me ramble on. It's been really nice. I've really enjoyed learning about Oxford. And you know, any suggestions? Does anyone want to suggest anything that they might want to hear about for my next Instagram video? So thank you everyone, it's really nice, got some really nice comments here. Is there anyone who wants me to talk about anything in particular? Could be English food, the music. I won't keep going on about the pubs or the museums, I promise. So if you have any suggestions, my pleasure, thank you. But if you have any suggestions, please feel free to ask, or to send me a message, or Alexandra a message, if there's anything you really want to hear about. But other than that, I'm going to go. It's about nearly 6 p.m. here, time to have some dinner. And again, just thank you all very much for listening. It's been really enjoyable for me, and I hope it has for you. And yeah, that's it. I will hopefully speak to you all again soon. Take care. Bye.